Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Management Diaries. This is MHN's property management podcast, where we focus on the operational side of multifamily, everything from leasing and maintenance to the resident experience to leadership lessons, business strategy, and everything in between. Today, we're talking about everyone's favorite topic, which is AI, but more specifically, what happens when AI isn't just a tool you're testing, but it's coming from your parent company while you're also merging multiple firms under one operating platform. And that's actually the backdrop for Kevin Owens' role right now. Kevin is the president of Arqline, and Arqline was formed after RKW was acquired by Alfred and brought together with Portera Living and A Residential. So there are a few different layers today that we're going to talk about. And Kevin is in his role, he's integrating teams, he's also aligning operations, he's also aligning technology, right? So I'm really excited to have you back on the show, Kevin. Thank you so much for coming back on Management Diaries.
Thank you, Denile. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me again. Had a great time with our conversation the last time we were together and look forward to an exciting conversation today. As you mentioned, Arqline is a new national property management model under which we've unified RKW and A Residential, which was formerly Portera Living, under one operating model umbrella. And our main focus, I guess I would say at a high level, is we're really working hard to give teams better tools and more time to focus on residents. And obviously AI is a big part of that. So look forward to a great conversation.
Let's start with the integration part. So you are now operating under Arqline
Yes.
and alongside Cortera and A Residential, right? What changed operationally as that integration took place?
Anytime you bring together multiple organizations, there's a lot that goes in that process. It's always most importantly to me about people and how people work together, how we can determine the best way that we can operate as one platform, one unified platform to give our team members the best chance to be successful. That's where AI comes in. That's part of the toolkit that we offer our teams. And so really the integration process was less about the systems themselves and more about the people and the processes we had in place. And we're working through to identify as one core operating platform that we'd be using moving forward. So, different teams integrated different ways, and whether it was operations or accounting, human resources, marketing, each group kind of had a specific methodology through which to work. The main thing we focused on was consistency. We wanted to have one platform moving forward, and so we ended up with the thoughts in kind of this way. We're really aligning, or the difficulty, I would say, was aligning how teams operate was probably a little more complicated than integrating the tech. Our technology was strong, and as we worked through, as a parent company who is a technology organization, it was very strong, and we're very confident in that piece of it. It's really about making sure that people have what they need. So making sure we really knew how teams operated and had one consistent way of doing that across the board was the most important thing.
Right. So you talked about like the kind of like the biggest part or maybe one of the challenges, which is to be expected with combining, multiple organizations like that,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
And so it was really aligning how teams are operating. And so, thinking about that, right? How teams are operating and in integrating that AI into how teams are doing that.
Right.
Are there things that you could see that were broken that kind of, needed to be fixed or not necessarily broken, but maybe just needed to be smoothed out or, things that came to light where maybe teams were losing time or they were getting frustrated?
I love the fact that you mentioned time. I think at a high level, I would say that what we found were teams weren't necessarily lacking tools; they were lacking or losing the time needed to navigate them or use them. And so we really focused on narrowing the scope, identifying, what the challenges were we were trying to solve. That's kind of the core approach that we use when identifying any tool that we want to implement across the board. And so I don't necessarily think I would say things were broken. Things were certainly different across platforms. While we were very happy with the fact that each organization that was coming together aligned very closely on culture and on how we treat each other and the people aspects of things, we definitely had different processes and different ways of doing things. And so identifying the one way we were going to do it, the process we were going to use, to ensure that the people that were using them, the frontline teams, the on-site teams, the folks that support them, had what they needed from a process standpoint. That was really the most important thing for us.
Right. And I picked up on something you said where an area that you were actually really aligned was on the culture
Yeah,
side of things,
yeah.
right? Can you expand on that a little?
Sure. I would say, whether you're looking at RKW or Alfred, the parent company, our parent company, or the Quartier Living side, which became a residential within our organization, each of those organizations very people focused. And so it's anything that we're doing, anything that we're working to implement or exploring as options, we focus on people first. How is it going to impact our teams? How is it going to make the life of our teams easier from a day-to-day perspective? How is it going to make life or the process easier for a resident or a prospect? How can it best serve a client of ours? So focusing on the people was a consistent theme across all of our organizations. And frankly, that made the process of integrating processes and even tools a lot easier in that regard.
Yes, I'm sure that kind of made it a bit easier, right? The transition at least.
Absolutely did. Yeah.
Um, okay, Kevin. So when we're talking about implementation on site, there was a report that IREM had published late last year that talked about property management firms implementing AI, but more so seeing more use for it and seeing that it was more of an asset, not so much on the flashy side,
Hmm.
mostly in like the basics, like the reporting, the communication, the day-to-day stuff, and seeing that that's where it brings the most value. Does that match what you're seeing?
It very closely does. When we look at any process, we try to answer three questions to determine kind of how we focus on it, how we prioritize it, what bucket we think it should sit in within. The first one is, does it require human judgment? And that's where obviously people come in. So if it's something that requires human judgment, then it's going to be really tough to automate that or to use AI to handle that. However, if it doesn't require judgment, if it's a pretty cut and dry decision-making process, we believe automation is the way to go. And so AI comes into account there for sure. Second question we use or we identify, let me get this right. Does it require judgment, but not necessarily proximity or closeness to the decision? So in other words, can it be something that could be centralized or optimized by doing it in a different way that doesn't necessarily mean it has to happen on the same specific location or at the same specific location? You look at things like back of the house, back office kind of things. So we have centralized our on-site accounting processes, whether that's paying bills, whether that's a monthly reporting, whether that's collections, those kinds of things can be centralized because they require some judgment, but they don't necessarily require that you be in the specific location where that judgment is needed. So that's kind of the second question we use to determine which way we go. And the third one is, does it require both? So it's really three options. If it requires both, then that's where it's got to be really people focused. And we've got to make sure that we're designing processes to make it easier, more efficient for the people that are doing that work every day on site to make that happen. So that's kind of how we approach that. And it worked really well for us.
No, I love that you're able to put it in these buckets and or answer these questions, and that's, kind of the framework, right? To see.
It is. And I don't want anybody listening to this to think that everything fits 100% neatly in each of those three buckets. There's going to be some gray. There's going to be things that that we think initially could fit into one and they end up fitting into another bucket. That's where trying things comes into play. That's where taking a risk comes into play. That's where really moving quickly and speedily and getting the feedback loop going and all those kinds of things to help us to over time determine which of the three they might fall into. But it's a process that works really well for us and has served us well.
Right. And it also means you're not just like guessing, right, for all of for
Yes,
as you try to implement it, which
that's exactly right. We consider ourselves visionaries and we consider ourselves an organization that is willing to kind of step out and take some risks. We also want to make sure that it's not haphazard and ad hoc and that we're thinking through things, that we're using as much data as possible, and really evaluating things from an objective standpoint. So yeah, it helps us do that too.
yeah, that's I mean, the guessing can also the outcome can be anything, right?
It 100% can. And if you guess, and depending on the outcome, if you're not tracking it well, you could guess the same way or wrongly again. So yeah, the more streamlined the process is, the more operationally minded it is, the more data driven it is, the better for sure.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have it very organized too, right? And that's how
We
you're
do.
able to track and to see, okay, does this fit? Does this answer this question, but not this one? Is this a
That's
gray
exactly right.
area?
Yes,
Um,
100%. That's right.
that's great. So speaking about, you mentioned the feedback loop. What about, or can you give an example of, something that maybe an area that kind of you ran into some resistance from, like with your teams?
Yeah, really good question. I would not say we got a ton of resistance from teams. We have a very structured process to acquire feedback from our teams. We have a regularly scheduled opportunity for our teams to give us feedback from a platform we call Ask Anything, where they can come join this nationwide call of leaders and they can ask questions, they can provide feedback, they can ask for help. We have roundtables where various levels of the organization, community managers can come together and share feedback. And our decision makers, the teams that are working to put these processes into place are all part of those calls. And so they're gathering feedback all the time. And so while we didn't get pushback, we got a lot of feedback. And that's exactly what we want. We designed those processes in order to get that feedback. And so we took that feedback. We found some things that perhaps we thought going in would be problem solvers, and they turned out to be maybe a little more complicated than expected. Maybe they felt like extra work versus problem solutions. And so we've adjusted, and we work to simplify. And we know that simplicity and usefulness beats complex every time. Things can sound really smart when they're complex. They also aren't very easy to execute. And so we really try to focus on making things simple and useful. And when we found situations where the feedback told us it was a little more complicated than we thought it would be, or it required a little extra work than we thought it would, then we adjusted and we responded to that feedback and simplified things. And that became a real process that demonstrated to our teams that we were number one, listening. And number two, more importantly, we weren't just listening, we were actually resolving challenges they were seeing based on that feedback. And so it increases buy-in, which at the end of the day, buy-in will increase adoption. Adoption enhances the chances of success.
What do you think generally, like, helped move AI from being something that is kind of sometimes for some property management firms, it's like something corporate wants us to use
Yeah.
to something that now that's genuinely helpful?
Adoption is the key metric we track. If it's not being utilized, if it's not being effectively implemented and executed at the site level, at the regional level, then it's not working. And so we've got to make sure that we're tracking that very closely. And what we found was it clicks when people see it helping them in the moment. And so whatever we're doing when we've implemented a process, whether it's a specific AI process or something else, when a member of our team on site has the light bulb go off and see this actually saved me time, this actually was more efficient, this helped me in this process right now, it dramatically increases the chance they're going to do it next time. And so it's back to that simplicity, it's back to usefulness, it's back to making sure that we're listening to our teams and implementing the things that they're telling us are challenging and solving those problems. And we found that when that happens, adoption goes through the roof. We love that.
Right. And the simplicity and the focus on that, on the usefulness, that extends to the residents as well, right? It's
100%. For residents, I'm a believer in optionality. We need to provide as many options for residents to interact with us, to solve their problems, to have great experiences in our communities as we possibly can. And the same concept goes. Every one of those options needs to be simple, easily communicated, easily executed, and solution oriented. And so, just like with our teams, we want the same kind of concepts for our residents as well. That's right.
right. So, do you have any advice or what would you say, like for operators, that they should be thinking about kind of as they're assessing implementing AI in some of these, in some of the areas across operations so that they don't like risk making the experience feel colder or making it more transactional, so that they kind of make sure they keep that balance.
Great question. For anyone considering any process implementation using I would start with focusing on where your teams are losing time. Um, where can we save them time? Where can we make things more efficient for them? It goes back to that focus on the frontline team member, the on-site team member. Our goal is to make life easier for them, and so that's where I would start. We want to make sure that we're taking difficulty away from our on-site team so that they can focus as much as possible on providing great experiences for residents. And so, if you start there and dial into situations that creates, time sucks for our on-site team members, I think you're going to win by solving those problems for sure.
Great advice, Kevin. As we look ahead, right, as we know, AI is just evolving. It's rapidly evolving, right?
It is.
And I mean, from where we started, we've come so far. And even in terms of adoption and understanding and seeing the potential, right? So as we look ahead and try to kind of for
Hmm.
operators who just want to kind of cut through with some of the noise,
Right.
um, what would you say like to anyone who says AI might be a little oversold, right?
Yeah, it's interesting how the pendulum swings. And AI has come onto the scene gangbusters. I mean, just big time. And I think there is some apprehension, there is some skepticism about the impact it can have. I don't think AI is being oversold. I don't. I think it is being misused at times, but I don't think it's being oversold. The approach we take is we identify a problem first. If we've got a problem somewhere, then we know we've got to find a solution. And so rather than starting with the tech or the AI platform, where do we have a problem? And then what can we do to solve it? So, start with the friction. Where's there friction? Where are things rubbing together you don't want rubbing together? So start with the friction, not with the technology. I think you'll win every time. AI is here to stay. It's going to continue to expand. And I think if you think about it in those terms, you're going to be much better off. However, if you approach it in the wrong way or from the wrong perspective, you're not going to make things better for yourself. And so, whether it's centralization or optimization or AI implementation or any other process or initiative that you're working to implement, the focus should be on solving the problem. So, you got to identify that problem first before you can solve it. And once you've identified that problem, then you can start talking about, thinking about, exploring what solutions there might be, including the technology that might be there.
What is something that you're paying attention to that and it can be something general. I don't want you to have to reveal too much, but that operators might be overlooking that you think they should pay closer attention to.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things I would share. One is, again, I don't think AI is being oversold. I think it's here to stay. I think it's going to be critically important for our industry as we move forward. One thing I want to caution, and I think looking forward, I think this is something that we are certainly paying attention to, and I think others should as well, is let's make sure that we don't forget the human side of the business. I think the successful operators are going to be those that automate tasks but don't automate relationships. Don't automate trust. Trust is built in a relationship that requires people. And so we want to make sure that we're focused on how we provide the best experience for our on-site teams, for our teams in general, for the residents we serve and our clients. I think if we can focus there, whatever tools we're implementing are going to be more successful. And so as we move into the future, I think there's going to be some learning that happens there. I think there might be some that are so focused on the technology side and the AI implementation side that they might miss a little bit of the target on the people side. And I think in the future, we're going to have a correction there and it's going to swing back toward a focus on the people side. We think we're ahead of that and we're focused there now. I think that's going to be a future option that people are going to be aware of and thinking about and kind of recalibrate on.
Wow, that was a great it was great how you summed it up when you said don't automate trust, don't automate relationships, right? I mean, because that's it's like not everything, it really just drives home that point, you know?
Yeah, it does. It goes back to the three questions we ask ourselves. It goes back to the fact that we're focused on people, and we can't forget that whatever we're doing, we are a people business. We manage concrete and steel and sticks and bricks and mortar and we have technology is an important part of what we do and who we are. I mean, we're owned by a technology company. We know that. It's critically important who we are and it's a people business. We have residents, we have team members, we have customers, we have clients. They're people, and we've got to make sure that we're providing the best opportunity for those people to be successful at every level. And when we're really thinking about that, we're really focused on that. We're going to be much more highly successful than we would be otherwise.
Okay, Kevin, I would love to close this out on a light note.
Okay.
Um, so just I would love to know kind of what surprised you the most, or would your most, or even, you know, because this is a recent transformation, it's still kind of ongoing, right? You know, just what you're most excited about as, you know, as this transformation has been, as, you know, has happened.
I think there's a lot of things I'm excited about. I'm excited about the team we brought together. The last 9 months or so, as we've integrated our teams, our processes, our tech stack, and all those kinds of things, we've learned a lot. We have identified a very strong leadership team that I am confident is going to take us into the future in a big way. I'm very excited about what we're calling Property Management 3.0. I would encourage anybody listening to look up Jess Beck's writings about that. She's the CEO at Alfred, our parent company, and she has a lot of thoughts about that. I'd encourage you to look those up on LinkedIn and other places and learn more about what that means. I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about what we're building in a general sense, and I'm very excited about the fact that our teams across the country are thrilled about what we're doing. They're excited about our new brand. They're excited about how we're building. They're excited about the benefits that are going to be in play for clients and for our customers and residents. And so there's a lot to be excited about. I could list 10 more for you. Let's just suffice it to say I'm really, really excited. Or maybe I'm pumped. We'll leave it at that.
Pumped, I'll take it. I'll take it. Pumped is definitely better than excited.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kevin, do you want to thank you so much for coming on and you know talking about this integration and of AI and technology with me, and it was a really valuable conversation, especially because you really focused on what actually happens, and you know kind of to how to even make the decision, right? And kind of where to
Sure.
start. And so that was really important, I think, for our audience, in looking beyond kind of how it's supposed to work, or where it's supposed to make things more efficient, but and you know, thinking about before that, right? Before
Yeah.
thinking, yeah. So that was really helpful. And you know, thanks for sharing just what's worked for you. And I'm really excited for, you know, you and your new role. And thanks for coming back and spending time with me.
Thank you, Denile. I've enjoyed it very much. Again, look forward to another conversation in the future. We'd love to do that again.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time.